I went on a foraging walk recently at a local park, and by the end of it, I realized something surprising. About half of the plants we were learning about already are growing in my backyard. So some of them are plants I probably would have thought as weeds before. But seeing them through different lenses and learning their names, uses, and their role in the landscape completely changed how I look at the space around my home. I had the opportunity to join Robin Greenfield while he was passing through my town, and we spent the afternoon exploring edible and useful plants at a local park. So it was a good reminder that abundance is not always somewhere far away. It might be in our backyard, it might be at a park nearby. So sometimes it is growing quietly in places that we walk past every day. My name's Denise, and I'm with Grow Your Own Vegetables, and this walk inspired me to begin creating a small native forage area along the side of my own backyard, moving and caring for some of the plants that are already growing in places I don't really want them. So come along with us as we explore, learn, and see this familiar park with fresh eyes. And if you enjoy videos about growing food, gardening, and connecting more deeply with the natural world around you, be sure and subscribe to our channel for more. One quick note before we begin: always positively identify any plant you're eating, pay attention to where it's growing, and forage responsibly. Now, let's head to the park.
Because I only need to know what I need to know in order to enjoy cleavers and have it be a wonderful part of my life. Some plants I learn the medicinal qualities and the edible qualities, the reasons why, but I don't need to remember the reasons why because I know that it's a wonderful food or medicine. So you can also blend the younger stuff in the springtime if you're making a wild beans pesto. So it's not usually the first plant that I talk about because it's one that I don't have a whole lot to say about it. But again, what I do is I just make tea. Alexis Nicole Nelson, who goes by Black Forager. How many know of her on social media?
Love her.
She said there is actually caffeine in the seeds of cleavers. Now, I doubt that it's enough where you're actually going to get a buzz off of it if you're looking for a buzz. But supposedly there's some caffeine in the seeds of cleavers, so it's something that you could look into if you want. Chickweed! So chickweed is, for a lot of foragers, this is their top 10 wild greens. I don't put it in my top 10 wild greens, mostly because I just don't find it as much as a lot of the other greens. This is more of a springtime green because it's sensitive to the extreme sun. It's here, and it's got the shade protecting, creating a microclimate. And so I would imagine that's why this chickweed is still around and it's young and tender. Chickweed, one way to identify chickweed is that it has what some people call a mohawk. So on just one side, there's a little row of hairs that are growing up just one side. And then on some chickweeds, if you pull it apart, yeah, the little veins will actually pull out as well. So chickweed, well, cleavers, I don't consider there to be any toxic look-alike to cleaver. Like cleaver, when you do this, and it looks like this, for me, this is clearly cleaver. Chickweed, there are some plants that look like chickweed. I don't know of them to be particularly toxic, but there are some plants that are like, oh, that looks like chickweed, but I can't quite tell. So if that's the case, what you're looking for is the little mohawk. If the little mohawk is on there, then it's definitely chickweed. And then chickweed, the flavor, a lot of people say, is like sweet corn. And it is very sweet corny. Other people will say it's kind of like wheatgrass, like just a really strong, really nice, potent greeniness. I like to put this into salads. I like to eat it fresh. No blackberry.
Yeah.
This is the Himalayan blackberry. And so a note on this plant is this is a plant that is called invasive. This is a plant that a lot of people, express hatred towards and, real animosity towards. And I don't feel any hatred for this plant. I feel love for this plant. And at the same time, I can want to do an ecosystem service and help to reduce the population of this plant. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about this concept of invasive. I don't call plants invasive because when we label a plant as invasive, we tend to have a negative connotation around it. There's hatred around it. But the reality is that most plants that are considered invasive, they are that way because humans took them from their natural habitat and introduced them to a new habitat. And in doing so, now they're growing in a way that does harm to the native ecosystem, often outcompeting the native plants. So I like to say that it's a plant that was introduced from another ecosystem, and in being here, it does harm to the native ecosystem and to the native plants. That's a reality rather than just a label of calling something invasive. And some people out there are against foraging. They'll tell you, you shouldn't forage, there's already not enough for the animals. Well, this is the perfect place to start, is with plants that are considered invasive. You've heard of being an herbivore or a carnivore. Well, you can be an invasivore, which is a person who focuses on eating invasive plants. And by doing that, you can be doing an ecosystem service with every bite that you take, helping to reduce the spread of these plants. So I love plants that are considered invasive very much. They're one of my staple food sources. And many of these plants, like in California, I ate lots of wild mustard, and I would often eat the wild mustard and then I'd also pull up the plant at the same time. So as far as the blackberry, I won't talk a lot about eating the blackberry because that's fairly easy. You just pick it off and you eat it in any way that you would possibly like. But there's numerous other edible and medicinal portions of the blackberry that I'd like to talk about. So you can see all of these new growth tips here. So the blackberries are what are considered a brambleberry. All the raspberries, the salmon berries, the thimbleberries, they're all brambleberries. And you can, well, first, many of us have had raspberry leaf tea. You can also make tea from the leaves of any of the brambleberries. So right here in Alton Baker Park, you have unlimited supply of blackberry leaf tea. It's a very bitter tea, so if you're looking for a bitter tea, this is one of my primo ones. So helping with stimulating digestion, that's one of the benefits of bitterness. And so all of the brambleberries, you can make tea from them, and they all have their own different, flavors, but you can work with all of them. The next thing is these tips, where the tips are nice and tender and break off like that. You can peel these tips, and then the reason you peel them is most of the bitterness is in the skin that you peel off. And then you can munch on these. And sometimes they're really bitter, but sometimes not so much. They have a nice floralness to them, and it's kind of like rose to me. If you ever have like rose petals, it's similar to that for me. But what's really primo is that in the springtime on a lot of these plants, you can have these tender shoots that are like this tall and as thick as your pinky, and you can peel those, and it's a pretty sizable vegetable. You can eat those raw, really nice as a trailside nibble, or you can take those home and add them into your soups and stews and things like that. So you've got the edible berries, you've got the tea for making leaves, and you've got these tips and the shoots. So there's a lot of ways to work with the brambleberries. And my only sadness around this tour is that I arrived in Oregon before the blackberry season, because when I think of Oregon, I think of the blackberries. It's been some of my most joyful days on earth have been summer here eating the blackberries. Here we have, who knows? If we were in LA, they would call this dandelion, I've learned, which is not correct. This is called sow thistle. So this is a thistle, and all the thistles are edible. This one is the most for me, of all the thistles, this one stands alone in its own group because it's not very pokey. It has a little bit of poke to it, but not very much. And this is commonly, like I said, in LA, people think this is dandelion because it has flowers that look like dandelion. But dandelion is only dandelion if it has one single stem with one single flower on it. One single hollow stem, which, you know, I haven't seen a single dandelion flower in this park so far. Are we kind of beyond dandelion season here, Eugene? Yeah. But this has what look like dandelion flowers, very similar, but there'll be many flowers on here. And this is the group that we group together, the dandelion, thistle, and lettuce group. These are all in the Asteraceae family, which is one of the safest families of plants to work with that has minimal toxic plants and many edible plants. And the dandelion, thistle, and lettuce group, you don't have to be able to know whether it's a dandelion, thistle, or nettle because you can eat all of them. But you want to know because you'll work with them in different ways. They might, one might have a more ideal root, the other might have more ideal leaves or flowers. Sow thistle in particular, the flavor of sow thistle is bitter, just like dandelion, so similar in that regard. And how I work with sow thistle is, I would say 80% of my sow thistle eating is just eating it just like that, eating the stem, eating the leaves, eating these flowers when they're younger. These ones have already opened up and closed and gone to seed. But also adding it to salads. If you just add 10-15% maybe to a salad, because then you can handle the bitter more. Or if I'm sauteing vegetables or greens, I'll add it in there as well. So basically you can eat this any way in which you would eat greens. The most desirable portion is the young and tender portion. So this is in the older stage right now. It's already gotten to flower, but in the younger stage, you could have nice tender tops that are like this and are, this thick or even this thick. And that whole nice top is tender and bitter, but fairly mild. This stage though, it has these little shoots coming off, and these are fresh growth. So at this stage, that is the most primo part to harvest. Right along this mid vein, it has these thick, they're not even really hairs, they're more like a bristle. And so this is wild lettuce right here. You don't have that on the sow thistle. But if you're eating it, it doesn't matter, it's fine. You can work with them both interchangeably, it's no issue at all. Wild lettuce tends to be more bitter, but I like to add wild lettuce to my salad bowls and munch on that as well. So, yeah. Thank you, wild lettuce, for being right here next to the sow thistle. Who knows who we have here? Sometimes you can think this is purple dead nettle, but it's not. Nope. This is called self-heal or heal-all. Those are two common names. As you can imagine with the name heal-all, this is a plant that's been worked with for a long time for its medicinal qualities and very much healing in it. I again don't remember the exact medicinal qualities. What I do is I make tea from this. There's about 50 different plants that I make tea from, and I just am consistently trying to drink herbal tea, especially in the winter, every day, generally morning and night. During the summer, a little bit less, but I really like to add self-heal or heal-all into my herbal teas. It's also worked with in, it's added into healing salves for putting onto the skin. But I also just nibble on this one. There's another one that where my food is my medicine and my medicine is my food. So you're looking for, so this is in the mint family. It has a square stem. So as I'm rotating, you can kind of tell that it's not this like smooth round rotation, it's more choppy. So this has a square stem and what are called opposite leaves. So this is a little bit of botanical knowledge. One of the common ways to identify is whether it has opposite leaves or alternate leaves. So this has alternate leaves. You have a leaf here, a leaf here, leaf here. They're not directly across from each other. This has opposite leaves. So the leaves are directly across from each other. So the mint family, all of the plants in the mint family have square stems and opposite leaves. So if you're out and about and you find a plant that has a square stem and an opposite square stem, opposite leaves, and is very minty smelling, you definitely have a mint. There's no question about that. If it has a very strong flavor or smell, then there's a good chance you have a mint, and it's something you can look into. You know, wild basil is in the mint family, for example. So it's something that you can explore, but also a lot of the wild mint plants are bitter and not particularly, you know, desirable. But it's also another really safe family to work with. So another just a nice thing to know, nice way to start to get to know the plants and be able to start to see some patterns. And one note I haven't hardly mentioned at all is the sustainability of harvesting these plants. And the reason I forgot to mention that is that every single one of these plants we've talked about so far are plants that you can harvest to your heart's content. Most of these are non-native plants. I don't know if some of these might be native, but these are generally very abundant, widespread plants that I would have no concern about harvesting. So I haven't made notes on any of those because there hasn't really been any notes. These are all plants that you can definitely joyfully harvest without concern. But this is basically a giant kale tree right here. We could eat all of the leaves of basswood, and you can eat the leaves of basswood at any time. However, when you want to really be eating basswood is when the leaves are young and tender, so the springtime. A lot of people like to harvest them when they're not even like fully unfurled yet, and they're still in like a bud stage. I do that, but more so, I guess I'm not usually around at that stage, so more so I'm eating them when they're in their full leaf, but when the leaves are in their young and tender stage. This is a plant that has been featured on the front of Roundup bottles, and it is a wonderful food and medicine. There is no such thing as a weed, that's a human-made concept. And most any plant that's labeled a weed in this society is actually beneficial to us in one way. They're all beneficial to us in one way or another. Many of them are the best foods and medicines we have, available to us.
What Robin just shared with us today completely changed how I see the park we walk through every week. Half the plants growing there are food. Half the plants I used to pull out of my garden are medicine. That shift from seeing scarcity to seeing abundance is exactly what the Superfood Garden Summit is about. 15 of the most respected gardeners, herbalists, and soil scientists on the planet, each sharing the single most powerful lesson they know, the insight that changed everything about how they grow food, the thing they wish someone had told them at the beginning. Clinical herbalists who can turn your garden into a medicine cabinet, soil scientists who will change how you see every handful of dirt, food growers who have fed entire communities from a backyard. The abundance Robin showed us today in a public park, imagine what is possible when you intentionally grow it. All of it waiting for you right now, completely free at the Superfood Garden Summit. Go to growyourownvegetables.org/summit. Register in 30 seconds and start watching immediately.